It's time to discuss the biggest myths that UFC fans have that simply need to be debunked. All right, whether this is a fight that everyone talks about as being the best fight ever when it's simply not, or a fighter attribute that gets overrated or underrated, either way, most people don't have the correct take on it. And these are just regurgitated, worn out, and tired, lazy takes that I constantly see, and I really want to debunk them. So without further ado, the first myth that I want to dispel is the idea that Israel Adesanya is a top 10 striker of all time. And I know that some of you guys are going to hear that and say that, oh, contrarian Tracy. When in reality, I think it's madness to consider Israel Adesanya a top 10 striker of all time. And I'm going to break this down right now and dispel this idea. And I just put out a poll, by the way. And about 59% of the people that voted on my poll said that Adesanya was a top 10 striker. 24% said that he was in the top 5, which is just madness. And only 17% agree with me that he's outside of the top 10. Now, I think Adesanya is the most overrated MMA striker in the history of our sport. That doesn't mean that he isn't good. It doesn't mean that he's not phenomenal. I still have him up there in like the top 25 all time, maybe around that part. But I'm just saying that compared to where he actually should be ranked, he gets way too much credit. All right? The idea of style bender and the twitches and the feints. Michael Bisping having an aneurysm with Izzy fainting on Robert Whittaker. Izzy drops Whittaker in the first round, and Michael Bisping has in his mind, and he can't change his mind for the rest of the fight, that Adesanya is 10-8ing him every single round. Michael Bisping and Rogan having their aneurysms on commentary aren't going to fool me, because Israel Adesanya is arguably a 500 level fighter right now. And I'm not just going to talk about his last 4 fights. I'm talking about his last 10. But before I get into Adesanya being a 500 level fighter, which means a win one, lose one, win one, lose one type of guy, if you're going to put Adesanya in your top 5 strikers of all time, what are you going to do about all of those guys that are in the most skillful weight classes? I mean, I don't think it's a secret that the marquee weight classes when it comes to skill are the lightweight division, the bantamweight division, the featherweight division. I think that you guys would agree with that. Yet a middleweight who is reigning in a division filled with mediocre fighters happens to be by and large the best fighter ever, even when he's losing half of his fights, and half of his wins are stink fests that are by no means dominant. A middleweight? Now, I'm not saying that it can't be possible. I'm just saying that, well, I would at least like to see that guy be a little bit more dominant and not lose 5 out of his last 10 fights. I mean, when I'm thinking about the top 10 strikers of all time, I'm thinking about Jose Aldo, Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway, Corey Sandhagen. I know he may not be in the same conversation as some of these other guys, but Sandhagen is more skilled than Adesanya. TJ Dillashaw, Peter Yan, Wonderboy Thompson, half of the guys that have outstruck Adesanya. I mean, I think it's just nuts to have Izzy this far up, okay? So let me read you his last 10 fights, starting with his first ever undisputed championship fight. He beats Robert Whittaker. His next fight with Yoel Romero, it's a robbery, but Yoel won 3 out of the 5 rounds, and that's just something that you could verify if you rewatch it. He beats Paulo Costa. He loses to Jan Blachowicz. Gets outstruck by Jan in the first 3 rounds before there was any serious grappling going on. So that's already a guy that clearly outstrikes Adesanya. He fights Marvin Vettori. He beats him. Not that dominant. Not that impressive. I fell asleep during this fight. I'm not saying Izzy didn't win clearly, but I fell asleep. It's not like Wonderboy Thompson absolutely embarrassing and styling on Jorge Masvidal, who's an excellent striker, by the way. We're talking about shitty, mediocre Marvin Vettori and Adesanya putting fans to sleep while beating him. Then he fights Robert Whittaker, and he robs him. Robert Whittaker won the 2nd, 4th, and 5th round. If you think that that's some kind of a crazy take, then you just simply have not rewatched that fight. I'm not saying it wasn't competitive. I'm just saying that maybe turn off the commentary where Bisping is saying every single round that Whittaker's still behind, even though he's outlanding Adesanya and jabbing him up and boxing his head off, despite having a 7-inch reach disadvantage. This is not some kind of a cope take. Whittaker won the 2nd round, the 4th round, and the 5th. He should have won that fight, and he outstruck Izzy on the feet. Jared Cannonier, he beats Cannonier. He loses to Alex Pereira. He beats Pereira. He loses to Sean Strickland. So let's go back and look at that. Beats Robert Whittaker, loses to Yoel Romero. Beats Paulo Costa, loses to Jan Blachowicz. Beats Marvin Vettori, loses to Robert Whittaker. Beats Jared Cannonier, loses to Alex Pereira. Beats Alex Pereira, loses to Sean Strickland. So once again, if this is a top 10 striker of all time, then explain all the losses. Why is it that he's getting outstruck in half of his fights? Why is it that when he wins, he looks mediocre? I mean, if Adesanya is not getting a KO, capitalizing on a colossal blunder, a huge mistake that his opponent makes, he ends up having a close tit-for-tat battle that half of his opponents are able to win. How the fuck is this the best striker or someone that's in the top 10? When you have all of these other phenomenal fighters in the more skilled lighter weight classes like Wonderboy Thompson, Alexander Volkanovski, Jose Aldo, Max Holloway, Prime Conor McGregor, Peter Yan, Corey Sandhagen, Sean O'Malley, Demetrius Johnson. And then what is the argument now? Like, oh, well, everyone in the top 5 is a middleweight. All the guys that have outstruck Izzy, those all are top 5 strikers of all time. Yeah, sure. So it's Strickland, Pereira, Whittaker, Adesanya, and Jan Blachowicz. Let's totally just scrap all of these other legends, like Wonderboy Thompson, who dominates every single guy that he's ever fought on the feet for the most part, who doesn't have these close battles, who doesn't have 5 fights where he's gotten outstruck. All right? Yeah, he's gotten caught by Anthony Pettis, but getting caught is different than getting shut down in a little bit of a tit-for-tat battle. Yeah, man, Volkanovski outstriking Jose Aldo and clearly beating Max Holloway twice. That just doesn't compare to Izzy outstriking mediocre Marvin Vettori and that big bum Paulo Costa. Sure. All right, Yair Rodriguez. Watch Yair Rodriguez. That is a freak of nature on the feet. Compare Yair's striking to Adesanya. Watch them side by side. You're going to see Yair freaking spinning back kick, head kick, the gnarliest leg kick you've ever seen. Like 5 strikes in the span of 1 second, nothing telegraphed, just mincing up his opponents. Alexander Volkanovski is shooting takedowns on him for dear life. Max Holloway is shooting for the legs for dear life. Mincing up, what's his name? Josh Emmett? Ilia Topuria. You think his performance over Josh Emmett was impressive? And by the way, Ilia Topuria is a better striker than Adesanya too. It's not even close. He just is. It's higher level, dude. It's higher level. Josh Emmett's basically got the same skill set as Yoel Romero. The only reason he's not as successful is because he's at featherweight. Okay? Did you see what Yair did to Josh Emmett? He minced him up. And then watch Adesanya on a jab. Oh, look at the feint. Adesanya's feint game. And a body kick. Feint. Take a minute off. Coast around, get popped in the face with a jab. Robert Whittaker, boom, pops in the face in the jab. And there's another leg kick. Oh, he missed the jab and he got countered there. But look at that feint beforehand. That feint ate him up. Whoa, man. And he got outstruck that round. And he lost 3 out of the 5. Damn, man, that's a top 10 striker ever. Like, it's just insane, Like, where are all of Adesanya's insanely dominant decision wins? They don't exist. I mean, you would expect Adesanya to be presenting some big skill gap over these guys, but most of the fights are damn close. Again, the skill gap that I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of all-time best strikers, it's like Holloway Cater, Wonderboy Masvidal, Volkanovski, and Aldo. Again, he's a great counter striker. He's dangerous, he's a good striker, but he's not an all-time great. The next myth that I need to debunk is related to Conor McGregor's takedown defense. Now, originally I was going to talk about him having overrated takedown defense, but I made a poll asking you guys what you thought on this, and most people said that Conor had average takedown defense. Not terrible takedown defense, not great, just average. And I would agree with that. But the take that I hear that I disagree with that gets regurgitated pretty often is this idea that McGregor did really well against Khabib. That McGregor's wrestling looked great in that fight. That could not be further from the truth. All right, let's just look at this fight. In the first round, McGregor got taken down in the first minute. I know McGregor shoved the head down and he made the takedown a little bit tough for Khabib, but people just go crazy for that first exchange and they look at McGregor stuffing the head down a little bit and making Khabib work. And the idea is that because Khabib didn't just bulldoze him instantly and put him on his back the second he connected with McGregor, it's some kind of a win. Last time I checked, McGregor was on his back 5 seconds after that exchange even started. So, like, what's the whole fucking big deal about McGregor doing really well in that exchange? Khabib had 4 minutes of control time in the first round. 4 minutes where he was just having his way with Conor McGregor. The second round, Khabib 10-8s Conor, takes him down in the first minute, and has 4 minutes and 22 seconds of control time. Again, the first attempt he gets. I know that the stats will show you that McGregor stuffed the takedown initially in the first round. I mean, he just prolonged the inevitable. The second round, the same thing is the case. He gets taken down on Khabib's first attempt. Then, of course, the famous third round where McGregor outstrikes Khabib and stuffs a bunch of the takedowns. Now, to be fair, Khabib really only committed to one of these takedowns. But even if you want to give McGregor credit for that round, fair enough, he still got taken down at will in the fourth. So, like, what's the big hoopla about McGregor doing so well in this fight on the ground? I know he was a tough out. I know he didn't just get ran through like Justin Gaethje. And his jiu-jitsu defense is a little bit better, and he didn't really get run over on the ground until he gassed out. But this idea about him doing well in the wrestling is just fucking bullshit. It just is. Justin Gaethje made Khabib work harder for takedowns, even though that was a much shorter fight. Okay? Dustin Poirier, his takedown defense, I don't remember exactly how it looked. It didn't look great, to be honest. It's pretty similar to McGregor's, to be honest, and I actually think that he got done worse than Conor. But either way, people have done better than McGregor when it came to the takedown defense, and he didn't do anything special in that fight. Outside of the third round, which in my opinion is like a pity round. Khabib was kind of taking that round off a little bit. He was standing right in front of Conor, and Conor was hitting him with his best shots. Khabib wasn't really shooting that many takedowns and still couldn't make a damn thing happen. That's why I call it a pity round. Khabib just right in front of him, getting hit with McGregor's best uppercuts and best left hands. None of them do a damn thing. So I think that McGregor's performance against Khabib was massively overrated, most specifically when we're talking about the wrestling. He did not give Khabib tough issues. 8 minutes out of the first 10 minutes of that fight, he got dominated on the ground. The fourth round, he got completely cut through like butter on the ground. And in the third round, of course, McGregor won that round, and he stuffed one of Khabib's takedowns, which was like actually a full force takedown attempt. The other two were just kind of Khabib just showing it to Conor a little bit, but not actually driving through all the way. Bit of a pity round in general. But that's just a myth that I wanted to talk about really quickly. Again, maybe you guys are going to disagree with it. My question would be, how? How did his takedown defense look so good? How are you going to disagree with this? Like, you're going to praise Conor McGregor for shoving Khabib's head down. And, oh, he almost got the whizzer. Yep, he almost got the whizzer. Oh, you see the footwork and Conor McGregor just really defending well there. Yeah, defending well for 10 seconds until he gets taken down. It's like, oh, wow, he made Khabib work a couple extra seconds. Whoa. And I'm not a McGregor hater. I feel like McGregor fans look at this fight like it's some kind of a moral win because he didn't get finished in the first and he didn't get done like Justin Gaethje. It's like, bro, not everyone is a white belt on the ground like Justin Gaethje is. Khabib still is arguably the best grappler in UFC history. It's not some kind of a horrible look for McGregor to get beat by him on the ground, but his takedown defense in that fight did not look good. That's all I'm saying. It's people say McGregor did really well. He didn't. He got dominated the whole fight. Outside of the third round, which was a bit of a pity round. As I've said a million times, let's get on to the next one. Again, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. But I just don't know how you can disagree with this. His takedown defense objectively was not good in this fight. Like, I understand McGregor probably showed some really good technique when it came to his takedown defense, but ultimately he failed, right? If you were to pull out some random guy in an MMA gym and put him up against McGregor in a wrestling match, I'm sure that McGregor's wrestling technique would look pretty damn stellar. But he failed miserably where it counted. You know, it's like giving Calvin Kattar a pat on the back for doing so well against Max Holloway when he's taking 500 significant strikes. Like, I'm sure Calvin Kattar showed some good crafty tricks up his sleeve, and he showed some good boxing technique in that fight. But ultimately, he got whooped, right? Ultimately, he got styled on by a better elite martial artist. We're ranking Conor McGregor's takedown defense based on him being an elite fighter facing other elite fighters. Not just in general, McGregor at the average dojo could do well. I'm sure he could. But against Khabib, he did not do well. The next myth that I want to debunk is a fight that is propped up as being the best fight in UFC history. And I'm talking Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald 2 that took place at UFC 189, which in my opinion is insanely overrated. The reason why this fight gets so much hype is because there's a couple of really cool moments and there's a lot of damage in this fight. Like the damage that Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald gave and took was very visible. I mean, you saw Rory McDonald's nose falling off, and then you see this epic stare down, and it's overrated as fuck. There are so many lulls in the action. There are tons of minutes where there's hardly anything going on. And then all of a sudden you'll hear Robbie lands a right hand, and Rory returns with a jab. The fights that I think are the best fights of all time are Yuri Prohaska versus Glover Teixeira, where there's literally nonstop action. There's probably 10 plus moments where one guy has the other on the ropes and they're about to get a finish. Even the grappling exchanges are insane. There's a crazy submission at the end that catches you out of nowhere, catches you out off guard, right? There are moments where Yuri has Glover up against the fence and he's beating his ass, landing 5 15-piece combos, and then Glover takes down Yuri and he's raining down elbows and looking for submissions and beating him up. It's just non-stop chaos. Rory McDonald and Robbie Lawler 2 is just a tit-for-tat striking battle. Like, Yoel Romero, Robert Whittaker round 3 is nuts, okay? Dude, the first round of Robbie Lawler and McDonald, hardly anything happens. I mean, these guys are landing like 20 strikes a round on each other. That's nothing crazy. A lot of it's just the overall vibe that people had during that fight and how revered both fighters were. And they just saw Robbie Lawler gritting down at times. And Rory was tough because he had his nose broken and everyone really respected that. And there was a lot of blood. You look at the fight. It's on YouTube right now. It's on the UFC's page. Check it out. You'll see exactly what I'm saying. It's a good fight. It's a great fight. It's just not the best fight of all time. But you'll see comments on it saying, by far the best fight ever. You're looking at the past with rose-tinted glasses. You were a Robbie Lawler fan. You missed the good old days with Rory McDonald. And I understand that. I get it. I understand it. It's subjective. It could still be your favorite fight. It is subjective. But I'm just saying, like, as a war, it gets overplayed. It gets too much hype. As, like, an action-packed, every single moment's crazy, it gets too much hype. You can still say it's your favorite fight, but I mean, like, there are a lot of crazier fights than that, okay? The next myth that I want to debunk is this idea that Michael Chandler has a chinny chin and will not be able to take a solid punch against Conor McGregor, or just this idea that he can't take a lot of punishment, or, you know, if McGregor starts landing flush, it's going to be the beginning of the end. I couldn't disagree with that more, all right? Michael Chandler has gone tooth and nail with big, heavy hitters like Justin Gaethje, and he went to a decision with Justin Gaethje. I know he got dropped in that fight, but there's also like 60 flush significant strikes that landed clean on the head of Michael Chandler that didn't put him down. Last time I checked, he went into the third round with Dustin Poirier and was winning the majority of that fight up until his mistake of going for a big, powerful slam in which he gassed himself out and got submitted. But he was outstriking Dustin Poirier in the first round. He was beating Dustin Poirier up on the ground in the second. Michael Chandler is having pretty competitive fights with elite guys. I know he's not a smart fighter. I know he doesn't have the best gas tank. But this idea that McGregor is just going to be able to go in there and tag him up for as long as it's on the feet is just silly. I understand McGregor in a pure striking match may be a real tough test for Chandler. But with the threat of the takedown, with Chandler's constant training and discipline, day in and day out, being hungry, training in the gym, throwing big, gnarly overhands, or McGregor that's used to sparring with these little bantamweight pipsqueaks from Bellator, it's just going to be a little bit too much for him to handle. Again, Chandler is going into deep waters with Poirier. He's going to a decision with the big, heavy puncher Justin Gaethje. Sure, he got KO'd by Charles Oliveira, but Charles Oliveira is an active fighter that's championship caliber, that may be one of the hardest hitters in the lightweight division's history. He may hit harder than Conor. I know Conor has knocked a lot of people out back in the day, but that was more so his precision and his timing, and of course he has heavy hands. Absolutely. He definitely has heavy hands, but he's not necessarily this guy with this one-hitter quitter every time, and because he relied on that precision and the timing, I mean, how is that going to stick around when this guy isn't training seriously as a fighter anymore, and he's just drinking all the time and partying all the time and hanging out on his yacht? It's like, that's just not a lifestyle that's conducive to maintaining your skill, your timing, your precision. And I do believe Michael Chandler will be able to take a couple of big shots from McGregor, a couple of big meaty hooks, if he just bites down on the mouthpiece like he did against Poirier and Justin Gaethje. Is McGregor just going to walk in there after, 3 years off and make him look easy where Poirier and Gaethje couldn't? I don't think so, man. I do not think so. All right. And of course, he knocked out Dan Hooker and, again, gave Gaethje tough moments, gave Poirier a tough fight, was winning the majority of the fight. So I think the idea that McGregor's just going to have this huge upper hand on the feet, and if Michael Chandler's standing with him, any shot that lands from McGregor's just going to bring Michael Chandler down, I don't agree with that at all. The next myth that we are going to debunk is this idea that if you've been watching MMA for a long time, or if you're a hardcore fan, you just automatically have good takes, all right? Let's go to Topology's greatest MMA strikers of all time list. Now, I would like to think that people that have a Topology probably pay attention to the sport. They're pretty tuned in. I'm not going to expect some McGregor casual that only watches when Conor fights, or a guy that watches like a couple of UFC fights per year to have a Topology account. And I just want to show you how horrible this list is for the best strikers ever, the rankings. All right, right off the bat, we see Adesanya at number 2. That's a joke. All right. A lot of these guys, there's an argument for them to be up there. Silva, I would like to have him in there. I mean, I think there's a good argument for that. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo, Mirko Cro Cop. Before Volkanovski, you got Volk at 12, but Mirko Cro Cop at number 7. All those plumbers and milkmen and electricians that Mirko Cro Cop was beating, but he deserves the 7th spot. Of course, man. Better than Alex Pereira. I understand Mirko Cro Cop was a bad dude back in the day, and he definitely was a good striker, but the idea of him being ahead of Alex Pereira is a joke. All right? Volk at number 12. I mean, don't even get me started. Lyoto Machida. Oh, my. Chuck Liddell is higher than Robert Whittaker, Yair, Peter Yan, Justin Gaethje, Sean O'Malley, Demetrius Johnson. You've got Chuck Liddell higher than Demetrius Johnson. So, I mean, this is just a quick one. I don't need to absolutely annihilate every single ranking spot on this list for you guys to get the point. You know there's an issue when big slugger Chuck Liddell and his plumber wins are ahead of Demetrius Johnson. And yeah, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is, if you've been watching this sport for a long time, that doesn't necessarily mean you're just like the godfather of knowledge. All right, because there's a lot of those guys that tell me that Mark Coleman would cut it in today's day and age, and I just think that's a little bit crazy. That's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I want to do another one of these myths videos, but let me know in the comments which UFC myths are your favorites, or, I mean, which ones do you really disagree with? Do you have any others in mind that I didn't bring up in this video? Let me know in the comments. Until next time.